أهلا بكم في محورنا الأخير المسجل في حلقة هذه الليلة، وأرحب بضيفي في هذا المحور البرلماني البريطاني السابق والناشط في دعم القضية الفلسطينية السيد جورج غالاوي. سيد جورج، مساء الخير.
Good afternoon, very nice to be with you.
أهلا وسهلا بك، وأبدأ وأنت صوت دائما ما يصدح في دعم القضية الفلسطينية، والسؤال: ما الذي يدفعك لدعم القضية الفلسطينية اليوم؟ وماذا يمكن أن نقدم لفلسطين في إطار ما يحدث اليوم من انتهاك لحقوق الإنسان في فلسطين وهجوم إسرائيلي متواصل على قطاع غزة؟
Well, I'm not really hearing the translation well, but I think I get the gist of your question. The catastrophe, the Nakba, which is going on in front of our eyes, if we look hard enough, at least, is distressing and causing great stress and strain throughout the world. Of course, the first price is being paid by the people in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, but the second price is being paid, I think, throughout the Arab world. The stress and the strain and the danger that this all places on the Arab political structures and system of governance should not be underestimated. Of course, some countries are stronger than others. Some countries are more able than others. Some countries are more willing than others. But it calls into question the whole meaning of an Arab nation, the whole meaning of an ummah, if no one can do anything when one piece of the body is being savaged to pieces and its youngest members, its babies and children, are being routinely massacred, several per hour massacred. More than 10,000 children in 10 weeks have been massacred, and that's just the children, it's just the ones we've dug out from under the rubble. So no one should underestimate the gravity, the scale of this crisis for everybody.
أستاذ جورج، اليوم الجميع يتحدث عن إمكانية إيجاد مخرج عادل وحل عادل ودائم للقضية الفلسطينية، وهناك اختلاف بماهية هذا الحل العادل من وجهة نظر الطرفين، الفلسطيني الذي يعتبر أنه يدافع عن أرضه ويريد حقوقه كاملة غير منقوصة على أقل تقدير وفق القوانين الدولية والتشريعات الدولية، وطرف إسرائيلي لا يريد أن يمنح الفلسطينيين شيئا لا في الضفة الغربية ولا في قطاع غزة. هل يمكن الوصول لمخرج حقيقي لحل عادل شامل للقضية الفلسطينية؟ وما هو هذا الحل الذي قد تقبل به كل الأطراف اليوم المتنازعة على أرض فلسطين التاريخية؟
Well, I've been looking for an exit for more than 50 years of my life. I first became involved in this question back in the 1970s. But it has to be an exit that goes somewhere. It has to be an exit that isn't a blind alley, that doesn't have a brick wall at the end of the exit. And I've been here before because of my close association with the late President Arafat. I supported the Oslo Agreement. That was supposed to be an exit, but it turned into a cul-de-sac, a dead end, and is now, to all intents and purposes, a dead parrot, as we say in Britain. It's an ex-solution. It's no longer viable. Hundreds of thousands of illegal settlers have been planted in the territories that were supposed to be the mini Palestinian state. Gaza and the West Bank remain separated one from the other, and Gaza is now in the kind of ruins that Dresden and Hamburg and Berlin were in 1945. So it's very difficult to see how you could breathe any life into that particular dead parrot. But of course, the Palestinian people are the most desperate for an exit. But they are not so desperate that they are prepared to surrender their rights. If we've learned anything in the last 75 years and more, it is that the Palestinians will never surrender their inalienable right, and they will never surrender their land, even if that piece of land is a refugee camp clinging to the edge of Palestine on the Mediterranean coast in what's called the Gaza Strip. So I'm ready to support any exit that is honorable and dignified and leads to a resolution of this subject. But first of all, we have to stop firing. First of all, we have to get an immediate ceasefire and an end to the siege. The people in Gaza are literally starving to death. In fact, all four horsemen of the apocalypse are rampaging through Gaza. We don't just have war, we have famine, we have pestilence, and now we have disease. That was the reason why Israel destroyed the healthcare system. That's why they destroyed the sewage system, the water system. They want an epidemic or multiple epidemics to sweep through the Gaza Strip so they can thin out, in that terrible Nazi phrase that one of their ministers used, thin out the Gaza population, preferably until it is threadbare. So the immediate demand must be for an immediate ceasefire and an end to the siege. Then we can convene an international conference to see what long-term solution we can find to this, because we've been going through this for a very, very long time in Gaza. Siege and war, invasion, massive bombardment. This didn't begin on October the 7th. I myself was leading convoys into Gaza after such disasters as far back as 2008, getting on for 20 years of siege and slaughter.
أنت تحدثت عن هذه النقطة وسأعود لبعض تفاصيلها، لكن قبل ذلك تحدثت عن موضوع وقف الحرب في غزة، وقف العدوان على غزة، والسؤال أين المجتمع الدولي اليوم من كل ما يحدث في غزة وكل ما يحدث في الضفة الغربية، كل ما يحدث مع الفلسطينيين؟ لماذا المجتمع الدولي يعيش حالة النكران الكامل لكل ما يحدث في قطاع غزة والضفة الغربية؟
Well, the international community is not. If by that you mean the Western countries, who constitute 13% of the population of the globe, of course, they are 100% behind Israel, even if they are now having some doubts, even if they are now having some second thoughts about just where Netanyahu is taking them. At the same time, they are supplying and transporting the weapons that are murdering the Palestinian children. But it was always thus. These Western countries have always been the prime supports for the settler state of Israel, and that's because they are the parents of the Israeli state. They gave birth to it. And they gave birth to it for a purpose. And that purpose has been successfully enjoyed by them for well over half a century. But the rest of the world, Latin America, Africa, Asia, the countries like China and Russia are 100% opposed to what's going on in the Gaza Strip right now. So we should never buy the false thesis that these people, Sunak, Macron, Biden, and so on, that they are the international community. They are not. They are vetoing the will of the international community at the United Nations several times. Since October 7th. We'll see what happens in the latest vote. But the bigger question for me, if you'll forgive me saying so, is what about the Arab community. Does Shab Arabi Wahad mean anything? Does the concept of an ummah mean anything? Does the concept of one language, one religion, do these things mean anything? And if they do, when will we see the results of that?
لكن أنا أتحدث عن الحكومة البريطانية قليلا، وهي متحيزة لصالح تل أبيب رغم امتناعها عن التصويت في الجلسة الأخيرة. الموقف الأمريكي مختلف، هو موقف داعم فقط ولا ينظر للأمر بغير أن إسرائيل تدافع عن نفسها، دون أن يذكر 75 عاما التي ذكرتها أنت من المعاناة الفلسطينية في ظل الاحتلال. هل هناك تفسير لهذا التحيز باستثناء أن من خلق هذا الكيان في هذه المنطقة هي هذه الدول؟ هل المصالح فعلا تنصب فقط اتجاه إسرائيل وليس هناك مصلحة مع الأمة العربية التي ترفض ما يحدث اليوم؟
Well, not only have they forgotten the 75 years of Palestinian suffering, they have forgotten what happened to them. There's a reason, you know, why the late Her Majesty the Queen never visited Israel. Never. Although she was everywhere else in the world, she visited more than 120 countries. But she never visited Israel. And there's a reason for that. The people running Israel now, the Likudniks, the Jabotinsky tribe, are the people who were murdering Her Majesty's subjects, officials, police officers, soldiers. During the British Mandate, they talk about terrorism, but actually they invented terrorism. This tribe of which Netanyahu is now the head, they invented modern terrorism. And yet they talk about terrorism as if this was something foreign or alien to them. They were trying to murder Winston Churchill when he was fighting against Adolf Hitler. They bombed the Foreign Office in London when we were at war with Adolf Hitler. They assassinated Lord Moyne when we were at war with Adolf Hitler. They hanged British sergeants by piano wire in the orange groves around Jaffa, Haifa. They blew up the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. The British government has forgotten all of that. Never mind forgotten about the suffering of the Palestinian people. Look, Britain is the tail of the American dog. And the tail cannot wag the dog. If Joe Biden, a very unimpressive head of a dog, I must say, if he says wag, we wag. If he says stop wagging, we stop wagging. And I'm afraid that's the long and the short of it. Britain is no longer an independent and sovereign country. We are a vassal state of the United States of America. And of course, there are other vassal states in other parts of the world. Those who live in them will know what I'm talking about, how that feels, how undignified that feels.
أستاذ جورج، في هذا التوقيت بالذات ونتحدث عن تغير بسيط في تغطية الإعلام العالمي لما يحدث في غزة تحديدا في فلسطين ككل، ولم تكن التغطية لا عادلة ولا واضحة وكانت متحيزة في البدايات، بدأت تتغير قليلا. هل الغرب اليوم يفهم تعقيدات القضية الفلسطينية، بات أكثر وعيا لحقيقة ما يحدث في فلسطين، أم أن الصورة الإعلامية التي تروجها وسائل الإعلام الغربية لا تزال عند ذات المبدأ أن إسرائيل الأحق وتدافع عن نفسها؟
Well, actually, the media are reacting to pressure from the public. You see, for all I've said about Sunak and Biden and Macron, I'm not, of course, talking about their people. The British people, this is the author in the land of Balfour, the British people have been out in their millions every single weekend and often during the week, in their millions and millions in London, in Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Cardiff, all over Britain. Millions of people have risen up in defense of the Palestinian people. And the demonstrations in the United States are, of course, also now legendary, including a very large presence in both America and in Britain of Jewish supporters of Palestinian rights. So on the ground, there are massive changes, and the media has to respond to those, because we live in a world now, unlike the one in which I started out in politics, where more people don't watch mainstream media than do watch it. And the younger you are, the less likely you are ever to watch news and current affairs on the mainstream media. Most people are getting their information from alternative media. My own show, the mother of all talk shows, now has an audience of more than 3 million per week. Sundays and Wednesdays, more than 3 million on a budget that you would laugh at. And so more and more people are turning to social media and alternative media and getting the other side of the story. And given that our side of the story is rather overwhelmingly persuasive, there's not much the mainstream can do but begin to trim their sails a little. And this is for the same reason that David Cameron, the new Foreign Secretary in Britain, who once described Gaza as the largest open-air prison in the world, but he was only the Prime Minister of Britain then, now he's the Foreign Secretary, his discourse, his rhetoric, is less ugly and crude than his predecessor, whose name I've already forgotten, so unimportant was he.
لكن هذا يحدث بعد أن تابع العالم تغطية الإعلام الغربي تحديدا للأزمة الروسية الأوكرانية، وفرق شاسع في التعامل بين ما يحدث بين روسيا وأوكرانيا واعتبار أوكرانيا ضحية لحرب روسية عليها، والتعامل مع القضية الفلسطينية بهذه الطريقة. هل هناك من تفسير لذلك؟
Hypocrisy with a large H. But again, the public are not stupid, you know. The public in Jordan are not stupid. The public in Britain are not stupid. They can see through. Of course, there are many sheep who will follow the sheepdog right onto the truck for the final journey. But there are more people who know and who understand the kind of sick hypocrites who rule us than there has ever been. I've been in politics well over 50 years, and I've never known a time where we had more allies for the truth than we do now. So in the medium term, I'm very confident that this will turn out to have been a large rock which Netanyahu has struggled to lift, only to drop it onto his own feet. But in the short term, thousands are dying, young children, their blood running into the earth. It's intolerable, literally intolerable. As the father of 6 children myself, by the grace of God, I cannot look at my own children without seeing the children of Gaza in their faces, and vice versa. So in the short term, we have to do something to bring about this ceasefire.
رسالة أخيرة منك أستاذ جورج للفلسطينيين في غزة وفي الضفة الغربية، وإن كان هناك أيضا رسالة للشعب الإسرائيلي الذي يجب عليه أيضا أن يوقف حكومته عن القيام بمثل هذه المجازر في غزة.
My message is to the Arab people from Marrakesh to Bahrain, from the whole span of this great ummah of 400 million people with one language, one God, one culture. And my message to them is to unite, to make sure that the Arab people are one hand, and that one hand is reaching out to the Palestinians in Gaza, but also in Jerusalem, also in what they call the West Bank. We have to bring bread, we have to bring medicine, we have to bring an end to this, and we have to stop whatever it is that we are doing, which in any way facilitates this mass murder, this genocide. I'm doing everything I can here, which is a limited player in the area, but those more intimately involved have, you know the word wajib? They have wajib in this. When people thank me for what I'm doing in Palestine, I say, La shukra ala wajib. And they say to me, it's actually not your wajib, it's our wajib. I ask everyone to remember that.
نعم. أشكرك كل الشكر البرلماني السابق والناشط في القضية الفلسطينية في بريطانيا السيد جورج غالاوي على وجودك معنا ليلة. شكرا جزيلا لك.